Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Erica Wheelis, technology reporter here at Ad Age. Thanks for joining us. On today's Remotely, I'll be speaking with Rishi Chadha. He is the head of gaming partnerships at Twitter. Hey, Rishi.
Hey, Erica, how are you today?
Doing well. Before we get started, a reminder to those of you watching on our social channels, if you like what we're doing here on Ad Age Remotely, please like, subscribe, share, or retweet this post. And feel free to leave questions on our social channels as well. We'll try to weave those into our conversation. Okay, so Rishi, I think many of us are familiar with how popular gaming has become thanks to the pandemic. Folks looking for more entertainment while staying in or connecting. I know that a Switch and Animal Crossing made its way into our home pretty early on, so I feel that absolutely. But I think it's also been a chance for more brands to enter the gaming space as well, and finding ways to, well, one, be like, what is this new audience? It's definitely changed. And how do we connect with them? So I want to start off by asking, maybe if folks aren't familiar, like Rishi, can you give an example or two of like, what is a gaming partnership with Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, at a high level, the way we work with our partners across the entire gaming ecosystem. So it's game publishers and developers like Riot Games or Epic Games. It's esports teams like 100 Thieves or FaZe Clan. It's gaming personalities like Pokimane. It's, news outlets like IGN. It's award shows like the Game Awards or even, festival events like Summer Games Fest. We're working with the entire ecosystem, and we're working with them across three key verticals, which are revenue, reach, and innovation. So how do we work with our partners to allow them to grow and engage their audiences on Twitter and allow them to distribute their content in unique and innovative ways while also making a business on the platform through monetizing their content? Not everyone's monetizing, but we're trying to think about what are we doing to do really cool and awesome things that get the timeline popping. And looking back at the past couple of years, some of the biggest things that I like to call out. One has just been our really deep and extensive partnership with Riot Games around their North American League Championship Series. We partnered with them as well as with Honda to actually surprise fans during the pandemic and even last year with prizes for tweeting along during events and allowing them to also vote for the Honda MVP award for the past couple of years. My favorite part of all of this was, we partnered with Honda and Riot last year for the summer finals, and we actually surprised the biggest League of Legends fans by giving away 2 cars to fans on Twitter. And then secondly, another great partnership that I've been really pleased with has been working with Jeff Keighley and working with him around both the Game Awards as well as Summer Game Fest, where we do fan voting, as well as tapping into things like Spaces and sharing behind the scenes content on the platform too.
You've mentioned Spaces. I do want to, I'm going to ask about features in a second, but that's quite a lot that goes on. This might be kind of a basic thing, but like, because this has gotten so popular so quickly, so like Rishi, do you find that more brands come to you guys, or are you going out and being like, listen, there is a natural like connection that we could be making here, let's talk about it?
I think it's a bit of both. We're definitely seeing more and more brands are tapping into Twitter and thinking about what they can do on the platform as they've seen the rise of gaming. I think one of the areas, I've been at Twitter now almost a little over 4.5 years. And, I think one of the biggest things that we've been trying to do is educate folks to say, hey, look, Twitter is the home for all gaming conversation. And no matter what game it is or where that game is broadcast, people come to Twitter to talk about it. And so we've been doing a lot of education with brands of showcasing that, and also showcasing that Twitter is more than just 280 characters. We have all of these different suites of products that the gaming community and the games industry at large is tapping into. So here's different ways you can actually activate against that conversation and actually be a part of the conversation too. So we've definitely seen, I think, especially with the pandemic and the growth and everything that's happened, an influx of interest. And we're hoping that only continues to grow too.
For sure. So with that influx, I love this. With the influx has come the influencers. So this is something I cover all the time, but it has been really fascinating to see. There's a couple of folks I know who just are like, oh, I've leaned into Twitch, or like, I'm just going to lean into my gaming and be a part of that. So I want to talk about how the Twitter gaming partnerships are helping creators specifically. So what are some features that you guys are working on for them? I'm kind of curious more like where do you see Twitter in the landscape in relation to something like YouTube or Twitch?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I would say we're in a really unique lane of our own where we complement both the YouTubes and Twitches of the world. As I was mentioning, I think we're very much this second screen experience. So people will be on Twitch or YouTube watching a live broadcast or a long form VOD, and then they're tweeting about it. They're sharing it on Twitter. When someone goes live on one of those platforms, they're telling everyone on Twitter first, like, hey, I'm live. Come check me out here. And so we're very much this platform for launching and allowing people to tell people and get awareness out about what they're doing. In addition to that, we're also this place for the conversation that's happening where people are sharing clips and highlights and talking about what's going on elsewhere on the platform. Much like you see with traditional sports or award shows, the same thing's happening in the gaming space too. And when it comes to creators and gaming creators, that's an area where we've seen just in general the gaming audience is really living on the platform, and I think gaming creators at large have really tapped into the platform and leaned into it, and have really found it very endemic to themselves. And there's a few different things that they're using right now. So recently we launched both tipping, and we've also started to roll out and test super follows. And I think both, it's still very early days, but we're really excited to see what the gaming community does with this content and with these products. Separately from that, we also have our Amplify program, which is a way for creators to monetize their video content. We work not only with gaming creators, but also just broader game publishers at large, esports teams and such in the program. But what's really great about the program and what we've seen over the past year or so is that we're continuing to focus on how we can grow and include more underrepresented communities in this program. And we've actually seen about 100% year-over-year increase in underrepresented communities being a part of the Amplify pre-roll program, with about 40% of the makeup of that program coming from gaming creators that are from underrepresented communities.
That's good to see. Well, tell me a little bit about the Amplify program, Rishi. So like, how does it work? Is it just like, is it a chance to do, is it like live one-on-ones? Are you doing like one-offs with brands? Or is it just like, hey, here's a clip of my gameplay. Like, let me monetize that in a certain way.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So it's really an area of short form, monetizing short form video. I think that's also super unique here is that most platforms are either doing live video or really long form video. And so here you now have an avenue for this short form content where you can actually run pre-roll against it. So a creator that could be in the program can actually take their content and say, I want my content to be monetized. Here are the brands I don't want involved with it, but I'd like, here are the categories that can tap into it because of my existing relationships. And algorithm able to serve based off of what brands are opting in pre-roll against their content. And so I think what's great about this is it's a complementary revenue stream to the other things that creators are doing on other platforms, whether it's a YouTube or a Twitch or both of them. They're able to now actually monetize their content additionally in collaboration with whatever they're doing elsewhere.
That makes a lot of sense. That would be me. I like props to the gamers that are like, I can do this for 6 hours a day. I need a break after 2. I have to go like walk around my apartment after 2 hours in front of my screen. So smaller content. That's where I would be.
Definitely.
I want to add, kind of going on a little bit more macro. I'm kind of curious, Rishi, like how have working with all these partners, how have gaming advertising revenues been impacted? This year is kind of early, but for 2020, 2021.
We've seen tremendous growth in the overall just revenue for our partners on the platform, and that continues to be an area where we're seeing that growing. I think that we're just scratching the surface. Even just thinking about like the esports sector, and you compare it to traditional sports, fans are being monetized at a fraction of what they're being monetized at on the traditional sports side. So I think it's growing, but we've still got a ways to go in terms of getting more brands to buy into it, investing more budgets into it. Maybe taking budgets that they're using on linear and bringing it over to digital and putting into social. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for it to grow, but we are seeing more brands taking this seriously and saying, hey, we should be investing in the gaming and esports space because there's a really big opportunity to capture this new audience that's young and is going to be the next generation of customers for us in the future.
You mentioned traditional sports, and I did want to ask about this because, yeah, Twitter is often the space where, like you said, it's the second screen. So like we have live sports happening and we, or even just like a TV show. I'm thinking of like The Bachelor or something like that. And we live tweet it while we're watching it. So I'm curious if you have seen have you seen any crossover or maybe learned anything from like Twitter's relationship to live traditional sports, and how does it translate to gaming, or is gaming just like a whole different animal?
I think it translates. It translates really well. I think the extra layer you get to it is that, on the event side, absolutely makes sense. People could be watching an event like the Game Awards and they're tweeting about it. For example, like with the Game Awards happening, about 12, I want to say 12 of the 30 worldwide trends were about the Game Awards. So clearly people are like watching anywhere they can, and then they're tweeting about it and sharing conversation and clips and highlights and things like that. So you have that very similar aspect that you have with traditional sports, and also with just award shows and such. Separately, I think the added layer you get, and I think this is what's super cool about the gaming industry at large, is that creators, teams, players, leagues, they actually engage very quickly with the fans in almost real time. So, sometimes you'll have an event going on and someone's watching it and saying, they tweet like, hey, I can't really see the stage because this light over here is like impacting the view on the screen. And immediately in real time, the league could be replying to them and be like, hey, we got you. We took care of that. And so I've seen these types of things that happen where there's this one-to-one conversation happening that's really unique to Twitter that you don't see elsewhere. And I think that that's the added layer of this willingness and openness to connect with fans in real time on the platform.
Yeah, no way that's happening in traditional sports. That tell that umpire to get glasses. I can just see it. Like Twitter would go nuts if they could really interact in that way. Um, Let me just take a second to reintroduce you here. If you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Rishi Chadha. He is the head of gaming partnerships at Twitter. And a reminder to our audience that you can ask questions on our social media channels, and we'll try to get them answered. Okay, so Rishi, the next one I want to ask you is, like, because there are brands that are maybe newer to this space, I'm curious if you do you give advice to brands who are like, listen, we know we have like customers in this realm, we want to be a part of it, but like, we're really not sure how. Like, do you have anything for like, here's how you can connect with like your gaming customers?
Yeah, we do that a lot. We give a lot of feedback and share advice. I think there's a few different areas we tap into. One is just around the data that we have. So, we share our insights like we did with our 2021 recap of, here are the most talked about teams, players, creators, games. So here are some of the areas you should be thinking about if you're looking for reach or if you're looking for where the biggest conversations are happening. And then I think separate from that, and just more of a philosophical thing, is we actually say to our partners and our advertisers is, trust the partners you work with. Let them do their thing. Don't try to just force your messaging in, but be willing to take risks and work with them and allow them to be creative and be themselves, because that's where you'll see the most success in the future. By being collaborative and allowing them to really steer the ship when it comes to creative, you've seen the most success too. So I think those are the areas where we show a lot of that insight. And we also just talk about some of the stuff we've seen with good campaigns, bad campaigns, mediocre campaigns, and sharing that information with a lot of the advertisers we work with in a way that's prescriptive so they don't feel overwhelmed, but also insightful too.
For sure, because I think this is maybe something that I think in the last year folks have caught on to this, but like the idea of a gamer has very much changed.
Yeah.
And I think there is maybe still, at least from folks I talk to, like gamers they can be kind of picky in the way that you speak to them and how things are presented to them. So yes, that very much tracks with like, if you have an esports, player, if you have an influencer, like let them take the reins a little bit. Like they've clearly made it this far for a reason. They have built that following. So makes sense for sure.
Absolutely.
Let me see. What else did I want to ask? Oh, that's right. I want to zoom out a little bit, Rishi. I'm going to talk about the buzzword. I think that will still be around this year, but the metaverse. I think that the metaverse gaming is an easy or maybe a more graspable way for some brands who might be new to this to get into this space. Just kind of curious if you are seeing more brands be like, we want to relate this to like an NFT drop, or like we want to have like a metaverse kind of like gaming experience. So I don't know, are you kind of seeing this among clients who are like, how do we, you guys work in gaming, how do we get here?
I think it's still quite early, and I think that the conversation is still it's kind of there's a lot of different interpretations of what people want to do with it. And I think that there's definitely interest and folks are thinking about it, but they're also thinking about it in a similar way of how people have thought about getting involved with gaming at large. They don't want to come in an inauthentic way and then offend people. And so I think the same thing's happening when it comes to NFTs and the metaverse and whatnot. So I would say, there's still a lot of learning that needs to be done. And there's a lot of conversation that's happening around that. The beauty of it is that the conversation's happening on Twitter. So people are coming to Twitter, they're using the platform to have these conversations, they're using it to educate people. And then they're also using things like spaces, which has been really exciting to see, where this community is all coming in and having conversations via spaces. And then, using that as a place to share ideas and actually have some thought leadership around it too. So I think that's been the big extension from all of this. And the big observation is that there's a conversation that's happening and it's almost exclusively happening on Twitter.
So talking about the conversations that are happening, and you did mention earlier, so Twitter has dropped its new 2021 stats, and I do want to ask you about those. So for 2020, I
Mm-hmm.
read that there were over 2 billion gaming tweets.
Mm-hmm.
So how did 2021 do?
Did great. We're about a 14% increase year over year. So we came in around 2.4 billion tweets. It was another massive year. I admitted, candidly, 2020 was so big. I wasn't expecting even that much growth, but like coming off of a year with new consoles, new games, like all of the things that happened that year, and then coming into this year, it's just been amazing to see. So it's clear that the fandom isn't slowing down and the conversation is showing no signs of slowing down. It's also great to see just how global that conversation is. If you look at the years past, and if you go back a couple of years, the United States used to be the number one country tweeting the most about games, but now Japan has been for the past couple of years. So seeing that happen, but then you're also seeing that the fandom, whether it's gaming creators that are coming from different regions, you're seeing more of them coming out and becoming more popular. You're also seeing, in the past several years, like if you look at the global esports teams charts, FaZe Clan has been the most talked about esports organization. And this year, Loud from Brazil is actually the number one most talked about esports organization. So, one of the key trends that we're seeing with everything is this globalization of the conversation. And we're seeing that the fandom from different regions is now, spreading globally and the conversation's going global, which is super exciting to see because it's a testament to that. While in the past it's felt very North American focused, gaming is becoming even more global, and the fandom around creators, teams, personalities is becoming more global too.
Absolutely. I think this is a part of the idea of who is a gamer has very much changed. So I would agree with that. I would think it was very North American centric, and now, yes, quite the global phenomenon. I'm going to pause for a second here. I want to give a couple of shout outs to the folks watching at home. So thank you to Art, Adam, Jen, Steve, and Kenny. Let's see, Rishi, we got time for a couple more for you.
Sure.
I want to ask, just very high level, what are some trends for 2022 that you are keeping an eye on? It doesn't have to be the gaming space. It could be social media at large if you want.
Really excited to see what happens with just generally speaking, what happens with, cryptocurrency, what's happening with the NFTs and the metaverse. I just the idea of being able for creators to monetize and own their IP and just monetize their stuff a lot better is really exciting to me. So like that idea is really exciting. Separate from that, I think what's really great to see is just the continued celebration and just more fandom around mobile games, as well as just cross-platform games. I think that's going to be an area that's going to be really exciting to see how that continues to develop. And then I think, we kind of took a little bit of how do I put this? We had a little bit of a slowdown when it came to just the esports industry and having live events. In the past, esports has been very focused on just, was doing digital only events, moved over to a lot of offline events. The pandemic happened, no more offline events. So I think the return of that is going to be exciting because I think a lot of fans are ready to have more in-person events and doing things like that. So I think that's going to be another area that's going to be big, is just the return of offline events and more of that fan in-person interaction is going to be great to see too.
Absolutely. I know that I think maybe there's a lot of folks in the industry that are kind of on the fence of like, are things going to go forward or not?
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick question from our audience. So this one comes from Sergio on Facebook. Do we see this global conversation happening in English only, or are local languages or local languages as well? I think that's pretty. I think that's a good one because you mentioned a little bit loud in Brazil, like Japan is really popular, but like good point. How is this spreading?
It's a good spread. Like we're able to track, and we're seeing, Japanese is a big language that pops up. Portuguese is a big one too. So short answer is yes. The conversation's happening in multiple languages and not just English. Though we do see English is one of the top languages, we're also seeing, just because of the country makeup of the top 10 countries that are tweeting the most, you're seeing a variety of languages being tapped into, especially ones like Japanese, English, Portuguese.
Makes a lot of sense that it would be that broad and wide reaching for sure. Let's see. Well, Rishi, I think we've got time for one more.
Sure.
I want to ask, like, I don't know if there's like a sneak peek. What can we be keeping an eye on from your team this year? Any goals in mind? Any resolutions, I guess, or is there something that you guys are aiming for?
I think my big overarching goal, especially for the next 5 years, is just how do we make sure that, any gaming creator can come to Twitter and be able to find a way to build an audience and engage with their audience in a meaningful way, but also to build a business on the platform that complements what they're doing elsewhere. So what are we doing with our monetization tools when it comes to Amplify, as well as tipping and super follows? But then also, what are we doing with some of our other complementary services like Spaces? How do we continue to make that an area that people want to tap into and engage with and have conversations with, in addition to what they're doing with 280 characters? And so I'm really excited about that. Super excited about what we're going to continue to do with video and how that's short form video specifically, and how we continue to build there. And then just, in general, how do we continue to push the industry forward and make gaming more mainstream? I think like that's always going to be important to me. Is, Twitter is very much this platform where the zeitgeist is happening. And so how do we continue to push that forward and make gaming more mainstream, which it already is, but I think that there's even more that we can be doing. And so how do we continue to be the place to marry all of that together and make it the place for the, all gaming conversation for years to come?
Very true. I think it'll be sticking around. I think there's plenty of parents that maybe caved and said the console is in the house. Let's do it. Fantastic. Well, Rishi, thank you so much for joining us. This was really great. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Erica. Have a great one.
You too. That's it for our Remotely today. A thank you to our Ad Age team, Arabella Breck, Alfred Mascaroni, Anna Sakula, and Lauren Chiardio for making this live stream happen. We have more great Remotely guests coming up in the next few weeks. You can check out adage.com/remotely for more updates. Thanks for watching.